SMT Nation, we back. In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at some expectations, what's fair, what we can actually expect from T-Mobile's exploration and innovative initiative in their technology arrangement with satellite. We're talking specifically SpaceX and Starlink. So we're going to take a look at this article from Joe Madden and, discuss some of those technical barriers that exist, and then also we'll look at an outage that happened with SpaceX Starlink, and then some really horrible, awful news that occurred or is probably going to be dropping that news today from T-Mobile, as more job losses will be on the horizon here. So let's start first with the Joe Madden article from Fierce Wireless. I'll put all the links for the articles in the description. Okay, so this is something that I have said for the last several days whenever we have offered commentary and looked at the news between T-Mobile and Starlink. They're going to try to bring some kind of, emergency messaging, possibly calling, maybe, limited data sessions for smartphone users to be able to connect to satellites in situations where the cellular terrestrial network is not available within places. Honestly, guys, it is a very cool prospect. It's very interesting. It's intriguing. It's innovative. It's all of those things. But I've said time and time again, the expectations need to be tempered. And Joe Madden says the same thing here in this article. So let's look at some of the technical restrictions here based on what he's saying. So, one of the very technical challenges in this is the fact that you're going to be going from a phone to a satellite. And in that link, there are many obstacles that could be making things difficult. One thing that Elon even mentioned during the announcement was the Doppler shift. So, not to ignore that, but that is, seemingly a glaring issue. Also, the fact that you need very large antennas, for phones to properly function. If you guys are old enough to remember, the old days, cell phones did have antennas and they got smaller over time, and they have been greatly reduced to simply, antennas that are built within the body of the phone. They kind of like sit on the rails and the edges of the phone. And they've been greatly reduced, and they're almost, unnoticeable in most cases, unless you have a metal phone. They got to like set them on the outside. Uh, but like you could see how limited, this type of connectivity is with, like in the case of Iridium, with Global Star's technology. Fair expectations are 2.4 kilobits per second on a good day, and the industry leader in this, Global Star, is able to achieve 9.6 kilobits per second peak. That's good enough for calling, probably, I think, a low fidelity call. It's good for messaging, right? Texting and stuff, but you're not doing data sessions over that type of capacity. So it's just very difficult to do. And part of the antenna restriction is also the fact that the antennas are not directional. They're omnidirectional, right? So they're trying to pick up from the entire surrounding, all directions of the phone. If they're directional, like towards, a certain direction, it's more effective. And they simply cannot do that. This is why, dishes are very large to try to pick up signal. Uh, th- you're looking at these technical issues. Um, I think, trying to get people 2 kilobits per second per user on 1,000 users on a cell, for messaging, I think that's adequate. You'll get the message. It might be a little slow to send, but it's going to happen, right? And things will no doubt improve. All right, I'm perfectly satisfied with that assumption that things will get better, the technology will improve, and the opportunity to actually do this does exist. I just thinking about time frame here, right? Uh, it's also just not going to be the best experience, right? It just we have to maintain a fair expectation. So these are just some of the things highlighted in the article. I'll link this again in the description for you guys to check out. It just allows you to frame it properly so you don't get your hopes too high and your expectations are more realistic. To kind of follow up on a similar related story, this one from the telecompetitor, SpaceX Starlink appears to have suffered a network outage. The network outage appears to be of some sort of global scale. Uh, People complaining of not having any service or it being disrupted. It has been restored, according to Down Detector and several posts on Reddit. but it has extended all the way from like New Zealand to the United States. So if your service was interrupted and you weren't sure what exactly was happening, it looks like this is the case. It's no different than other internet service providers. You know, you get these localized outages, a fiber cut, radio fails or something, and then you're going through all these troubles. That's possible too. So the satellites going down and not working properly, that is a thing, right? So just an update to let you guys know that this indeed was the case. Really bad timing when you're trying to show innovation. You get an outage, just bad optics, I suppose. Let me know if you guys were impacted by this, and how if it was restored and how quickly it was. And then the last story here, we actually covered this topic yesterday on the podcast. I'll go ahead and link the podcast in the description. You guys can just go to my live stream catalog and it's there. We had a nice discussion of, a meeting of the minds of several of the contributors here, the panel on the SMT podcast, and we discussed some of the broken merger promises by T-Mobile as they essentially, it was an acquisition. They consumed Sprint, took the network assets, building out a great network, all of those things, lots of capacity, doing home internet, right? Really helping and boosting their business. They're a huge company now with lots of subscribers. Obviously, things have felt a lot more corporate since 2019. Things have felt, pretty disingenuous at times. We've heard things like everybody has a seat at the table from CEO Mike Sievert. We have heard, bad news after bad news events of people getting laid off by the thousands. And, we've seen disgruntled Metro dealers, authorized dealers. We've seen lawsuits. We've seen lawsuits from former Sprint resellers and former T-Mobile authorized resellers. There's a lot of messy stuff that goes on with these types of mergers. You obviously expect it, but this is a stark contrast from the public premise and the public perception that T-Mobile has a squeaky clean, honest, uncarrier vibe to them that is obviously goes all out the window in situations like this. There is a large amount of layoffs that are about to happen. Again, we discussed all the details. I'll put that on the podcast link in the description for you guys to listen if you want to hear all those things. But we're expecting some form of a media pickup of this today. So at the time of this recording, it's like 6 a.m., August 31st. We reported this yesterday as we knew people impacted by this. A lot of Sprint engineers, former Sprint engineers, have been laid off, offered severance packages, amongst other things, to just be sent and get their walking papers. Also, retail employees have been affected by this. We're hearing that this could be the largest set of layoffs in the company's history as it pertains to the T-Mobile and Sprint merger. So you're going to be seeing a lot of people impacted by this. We have already seen layoffs. We have seen them in the, over the course of the last 3 years, I would say, or approaching 3 years, and we have seen thousands of people let go. So this is just going to add to that. And I know there were a lot of promises about the T-Mobile and Sprint merger being job positive on day one. That was from John Ledger, who was gone. So these are just the realities of this. There are going to be a lot of retail employees that are going to be let go. You're probably going to see some final store closings after leases are finishing, the consolidation of retail locations, the consolidation of positions, redundancies eliminated. There's already been reorganizational shifting that has happened at the top end with executives. And now you're seeing it with engineering, and you're seeing it with retail. Now, the engineering piece is interesting because, the Sprint engineers that are getting laid off here, Sprint engineers know the networking probably the best at everybody. They were probably the engineers that were responsible for stabilizing the network during this whole integration process as things transitioned and they started to upgrade a lot of the N41. They've been working with the spectrum for years already with band 41 and so on. And if you cut those who probably know this best and have been working with it, you're losing your experts. So I think it's fair to question and critique this decision. While it may be good for business and it may be a profitable decision, do you guys believe, or do you agree with the premise that this could possibly reduce or degrade the network performance? Should things happen, do you think that the skilled people, the talented people who have known and have the experience with this type of thing, now they're not going to be a part of the company? Does that impact future networking, upgrading, integration, and proper functionality? I think that risk does exist. Obviously, the bearded dragon talked about this yesterday, and I agreed with him. It's no guarantee that the network's going to just crumble to pieces. I don't think anybody says that. I think there are some perfectly competent engineers on the T-Mobile side, but I think it increases the likelihood that problems could occur, and dealing with those problems becomes more challenging when you don't have those that have the experience and the skill, and the know-how to work with these types of issues. I think it increases the likelihood that problems could arise within certain places and certain engineering teams. And you guys can tell me if in your market you saw a lot of problems with the merger integrations, and then you saw things kind of stabilize and improve quickly, it may have been because of Sprint engineers, and now they're going to be gone. So this is going to continue to be an issue moving forward, possibly. And then of course retail jobs and all those things, they're I mean, we're going to be seeing probably thousands of individuals losing their jobs in this. And who knows how many of them actually get a severance package. And we're hoping that they are able to bounce back and find better jobs and greener pastures. But this is the stark reality of mergers and acquisitions like this. And T-Mobile is no different than any other corporation. They can promise all they want. They could do all this and say, hey, we're for the customers and we're for the people and all that. The truth of the matter is they have investors they have to please, and they're as corporate as anybody. So keep that in the back of your mind as you go through this. They are no different than anybody. That uncarrier moniker is strictly for, just competing for wireless customers. It's not truly about people when it comes to those that they employ. Anybody can be slayed in these types of transactions in one fell swoop. Comment down below your guys' thoughts on this, as well as the SpaceX stories with the technical aspects of running satellite to phones, and then also the Starlink outages, if that impacted you. Comment down below. You are the voice of the people, the SMT Nation. Let your voice be heard. Like, share, subscribe for more. Turn on the bell notification icon to never miss an upload. Links in the description for my Twitter handle, my Gmail address for business inquiries, and then also my Patreon page if you want to support us and get early access to content and exclusive videos not found anywhere else. Thanks for watching. See you on the next one. Peace.